Today's lesson is Chapter 3, Lesson 7, on pages 195 through 200. Our objective is I can divide using the distributive property and partial quotients. Vocabulary is partial quotients. Question 1. When I break apart the number 1,569, I am putting the number in blank form. Question 2. Using the distributive property and partial quotients, divide 484 by 4. And it's broken apart for you here. And it continues down. Let's go ahead and watch this video to show you how to divide using partial quotients.
How would you divide 1,315 by 5? In this lesson, you will learn how to divide by using expanded notation. Let's start with a little review. Challenging problems can be broken into smaller parts. Let's take 20 times 13. I know that 20 is 2 times 10, so I can multiply 13 times 2 and get 26. Then I can multiply my product, 26, times 10 and get 260. This is the same as multiplying 20 times 13 equals 260, but it's a little bit easier to do it in the smaller parts in my head. We also know some things about expanded notation. Let's take a look at the number 2,615. In this number, the 2 is representing 2,000, the 6 shows us 600, the 1 shows us one group of 10, which is 10, and the 5 shows us 5 ones, which is 5. 2,615 equals 2,000 plus 600 plus 10 plus 5. So let's try using this expanded notation to do some division. But first, we're going to start with a smart estimate. When we make a smart estimate, we round not necessarily to a specific place value, but we round to a number that is close to our original number and it's easy to use or is something very familiar. So I'm going to round 1,315 to 1,500 because it divides easily by 5. And I'm going to get a smart estimate that my actual computation will be a little less than 300. So let's see how this works using expanded notation. I'm going to start by writing out my number in expanded notation. So the 1 equals 1,000, the 3 is 300, the 1 is 10, and the 5 shows me 5 ones. Now I'm going to make a chart, and I'm going to handle each one of these as its own division problem. So the dividend of 1,000 divided by the divisor of 5, well, let's think about that. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So 100 divided by 5 will be 20. Then 1,000 divided by 5 would be 200. My next dividend is 300. Well, I know that 30 divided by 5 is 6. So 300 divided by 5 would be 60. Next I have 10 divided by 5. Well, I know that one. That's 2. And I have 5 divided by 5, and I know that that's 1. So when I look at my quotient, I need to add up all my parts, 200 plus 60 plus 2 plus 1, and I get 263. Times 5 is 1,315. That means 1,315 divided by 5 equals 263. And this makes sense since our estimate was that our actual number would be less than 300. Let's try another one. There are 1,520 pencils for 10 students. How many pencils does each student get? I'm going to start with a smart estimate, and I'm going to go ahead and round 1,520 to 1,500 divided by 10 because that's pretty close to my original number and easy to divide. And I'm going to get a smart estimate of 150. Now let's give this a try. I need to write my number in expanded notation. So the 1 represents 1,000, the 5 represents 500, the 2 is 20, and the 0 shows me that there are 0 in the ones place. So I'm not going to need to show that on my chart for division, but we know that that is showing us that there are 0 in the ones place. Let's start by dividing 1,000. 1,000 divided by 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. So 100 divided by 10 is 10. Then 1,000 divided by 10 is 100. 500 divided by 10 is my next number. If 50 divided by 10 is 5, then 500 divided by 10 would be 50. And 20 divided by 10 is 2. That shows me my quotient is 100 plus 50 plus 2, so 152. times 10 is 1,520, which means 1,520 divided by 10 equals 152. So they would each have 152. This makes sense since our smart estimate was 150. In this lesson, you have learned how to divide by using expanded notation.
Okay, so let's take a look at this in our book. I'm on page 195. So the distributive property, it allows you to divide each place value. So if you guys were thinking in that video that it looked familiar, it's kind of like what we did when we were doing partial products, but this is with division, so it's partial quotients. So this breaks down the steps for you. In this case, it's 369 divided by 3. And I liked how in the video she did a smart estimate. So you can try that too. So first step would be to model 369. We have to remember she talked about expanded notation, so we make it 300 plus 60 plus 9. So does this box remind you of partial quotients? So we make the box again. We put the 300, the 60, and the 9. And then we have to divide each section by the divisor, 3. So we're going to divide 300 by 3, 60 by 3, and 9 by 3. So remember 300 divided by 3 in our lesson a few lessons ago when we talked about what to do when there's those zeros there. We can just do 3 divided by 3. We know that's 1. Let me get my pen out. Okay, so we know 3 divided by 3 is 1. Pen's not working, sorry. I'll just put these on. Okay, so 3 divided by 3 is 1, and then we put the 2 zeros on the end. So same thing with 60 divided by 3. We know that 6 divided by 3 is 2. We can just put that 0 on the end. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. So then our third step would be to add these quotients together. So 100 plus 20 plus 3 is 123. So that means 369 divided by 3 is 123. So to check your answer, you can multiply. 123 times 3 equals 369. Okay, so I may have mixed this up on our last page, but what we were just talking about on page 195 was the distributive property. So now we're going to talk about partial quotients. So in this problem, it is 738 divided by 6. So they wrote it out kind of like long division, but it's a little bit different. So now we have to think of a compatible number, like we did in our last lesson. So if I'm just looking at 738, and it's kind of tricky to think of something that's compatible with 6, but I know 600 is pretty close to 738, and that would be really easy to divide by 6. So we can go with 600. So then we can divide 600 by 6. So when you do that, you have to subtract the 600 from our 738, our original number. So 600 divided by 6 is 100. So you would write that quotient off to the side here. 100. So then 100 is a partial quotient. So we don't have the whole answer yet, but we have a part of it. Okay, so now once we subtract that 600, we have 138 left. So 138 is still pretty tricky to divide by 6 in our head. So we can think of a compatible number. Well, 120 is pretty close to 138, and I know 12 divided by 6, and we remember that 0 trick, so we could do that, 120 divided by 6. So we'd have to subtract out that 120 from the 138 then, and 120 divided by 6 would be 20 then. Because remember, 12 divided by 6 would be 2, and then we can put that 0 on the end. So then when we subtract 138 minus 120, there's 18 left. So 20 is our partial quotient for the tens place. So now we just have to divide this 18 by 6. Well, that's an easy one, so we don't have to think of a compatible number for that. So 18 divided by 6, and we get 3. So 3 is the partial quotient in the ones place. Now we have to add all of these together. Oop, my circle didn't quite make it. To add all of our partial quotients together, so I'm going to put these on. 100 plus 20 plus 3 equals 123. So there are 123 students. That's our answer. So now we can multiply to check it. So 123 times 6 would get us 738, which is what we started with, so we were correct. Check out the homework helper on page 199. It walks you through that distributive property again, and it gives you the steps for that. So you can look at that in your book. All right, so let's look back at our questions. Question 1 is just asking, when you break apart the number, what are you putting it in what form? So she said that in our video, so look back if you forgot that. And then you're going to work out this problem using the distributive property and partial quotients. So 484 divided by 4. So here's the little chart for you, and you have to think of each step of this. So look back in your book if you are forgetting a step, and then you would write your final answer here.